Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Gooey's Dungeon Dive, the podcast where we rank every single dungeon in The Legend of Zelda, and we're here, the season finale of Adventure of Link, and as always, for our season finales, I'm joined by my good pal, Corey Richmond. How's it going, Corey?
It's going good. I'm excited to be back and excited to talk some Zelda too.
Yeah. So I guess this is just the thing we're gonna do now, as long as you're down.
I'm fine with that. I'll be the finale guy.
Yeah, and then that's your opinion will be what really matters. How about that?
Okay.
It's just good that we'll provide a nice little alternative to my list, you know.
Yeah.
And we've already got two different flavors here, which is nice.
Oh yeah, I think this game really kind of. Well, we had some stark differences with Zelda 1, but I think this one kind of is splitting up our lists even farther.
Yeah, I'm like, I could be, looking at yours, I'm like, okay, I could move some of mine around. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's really like the top couple that are, like, by the time we get through the series, where I'm like, these are the ones I feel like will probably have a fighting chance for a minute, so... But then, like, the whole bottom is like, this is pretty good stuff, but, is it like does it compare to the Forest Temple and Ocarina of Time? I don't know.
Yeah, by the time we get to those kinds of dungeons, I'm guessing a lot of the bottom halves of our lists are going to kind of just stay towards the bottom.
Right. But, we'll see, so we talked about in the last video, the stuff about The Legend of Zelda that kind of surprised us, Mm-hmm. And I think this game has some of that too. Was there anything about Adventure of Link and in the dungeons specifically where you're like, oh, I never saw it this way before until like replaying it?
Yeah, well, so Zelda 2 is not one of my favorite Zelda games, and
Sure.
going into this, I think I told you like these are most likely gonna be like right on the bottom of my list, and that actually ended up just not being true at all. There is some stuff that I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit that I really wish these dungeons had that could possibly bump them up higher for me. But as I was playing through, I was noticing a lot of really cool like structural layouts and little tricks they do with the layout design that for some dungeons leads into some really intuitive and clever exploration.
I would say after the first dungeon, which is fine, each one kind of does have its own like gimmick in a way. Like each one has a specific type of thing that is different from the other ones that you don't normally think about it because it's it's like at the surface level, it's just like, well, it's a different color. Yeah. But then like there is some different types of gameplay going on.
Yeah, there's more going on, and that's kind of something that I felt with Zelda 1 too at first, is that if you had asked me before I did a little bit more of a deep dive on these two games, I would have just been like, oh, the dungeons all kind of blend together. But now after playing through them and paying closer attention to each one, they do really have their own kind of things that make them stand out.
I still felt like, and I don't mean this in a totally a bad way, like they still do kind of blend together, like the whole time I was going along, I felt like the progression of the dungeons was pretty consistent. It was either like harder combat wise or like bigger or like there was something trickier every dungeon. So like that's why my list, I'm looking at yours and it's like it's a pretty good, like it's a pretty balanced list, where mine I was having a hard time, like I kept going off the first one like, okay, this one's like a little bit more interesting than the first one. Mm-hmm. And so it was hard for me to rank. So I'm looking at yours and I'm like, okay, I could probably like move some down and like separate some of these. But even in your lists, you have like four dungeons grouped together here.
Yep, they definitely do have, and I think that's probably just because of the game itself and how this game does the dungeons, that it doesn't quite break through the threshold of some of the original Legend of Zelda dungeons that I like. But I do agree that they progress very gradually. Like Parappa Palace is at the bottom right now. Mm-hmm. And then basically from there, as I was playing, it was like, okay, this one's a little bit cooler. All right, there's some more enemies that I like in this one. Okay, this one actually has some cool layout stuff. And then as it goes forward, it was like it was almost like I was more and more impressed with each one for the most part until a certain point.
Oh, sure. You mentioned like stuff you thought could have like raised the dungeons on your list. Mm-hmm. What would that be? Is it just like, for me, it was like Adventure of Link is like held back in a little bit just due to like the way it's made, you know, but I don't know.
The way that you only have 3 lives. If you fall down a pit, you lose a life. Mm-hmm. If you lose a life, you know, you go back to the room, but if you game over, then you get hucked all the way to North Castle unless you're in Great Palace.
Yeah, I was trying to reckon with that a lot because I was like, well, you know, that's just also a flaw with the game. But then it was like, exactly. If that's how the game...
That's not really the dungeon's fault, any of these dungeons, really.
But I was also thinking, like, if that's how the game is made, then, like, maybe the dungeons should also, like, not have those types of rooms, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's fair.
So it's a catch-22, I think.
I mean, I think some of those things, it's like, okay, it was just a limitation. Some of those things, it's like, okay, they probably could have, you know, thought of a better way around this. But one of the main things that I really wish Zelda 2 had was maps. I really wish I had a map in every single one of these dungeons. And especially, you know, for like Parappa, Medoro, and like Island Palace, it's not that bad because they're not that big. But as you get into like the 4th, the 5th, and especially like the last 3, the layouts start to get really big, really complex. And it becomes such a pain in the ass to remember exactly where you've been and remember the entire layout of huge sprawling dungeons. Mm-hmm. And something that I pointed out when we were talking about Ocean Palace in particular, I feel like that's where there's a really big step up in complexity. And that dungeon in particular has like, I think it was like 4 rooms that you have to descend into on an elevator that start off with literally the exact same visuals. So that just lends itself to being even more confusing because you're like, wait a minute, was I here already? Or is this a new room?
Yeah, I hadn't considered that like maybe making a more memorable landmark, like when you enter the room, could help too. But yeah, I don't see why. Well, I guess that was just at the time, like, I don't think Metroid had a map at the time. And, you know, that's even more egregious because that's the whole game. Yeah. What else? Yeah, a lot of games like this, you know, like the original Legend of Zelda had a map, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely would have been a thing.
Like I was saying, because I know I didn't play this, you know, with the manual in hand or anything. But I know the manual does provide, like, at least overworld stuff. It'll tell you how to get to the first few dungeons. And I know in the original Legend of Zelda, a common practice was to kind of draw out your own maps of these dungeons. And I found myself at the end of Zelda 2 being like, maybe I should have been doing that for this game, because that probably would have helped me keep track a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, it does say, like, oh, they're complex, you should make a map, you know, and, like, that's actually kind of fun. I think that's, like, some people think some of that is, like, dated, but that's actually kind of cool. Like, I think you could probably make a game now that encourages someone to do that as, like, part of as, like, a gimmick or, like, gameplay, you know, the true. Game. Like, and that's fun, but yeah, I mean, I don't think that, like, is necessary for the game. Like, yeah, if they had an in-game map, at least in Legend of Zelda, they had an in-game map, but you'd probably want to keep track of what's on the screen still, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, even in this one, like, I ended up getting through it without relative issue. Like, I've only fully played through this game once before, and I think I only had to consult a walkthrough. The first time I played through it, I hugged a walkthrough the entire playthrough. This time, I think I only had to consult a walkthrough maybe like once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
And none of those instances were in dungeons, so...
Yeah, there's a lot of cryptic overworld stuff for sure. Yeah, I didn't... when I played it back earlier this year, I only had to look up a couple things, and then this time I decided outside of the dungeons, I was just like looking up where everything was just because I was trying to get to the dungeons quicker. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
But,
that's a thing that this game has. It's got like there's towns in this game, and it may seem like every NPC is just like a random person, but there's some crucial information that you need to get from them.
There were certain things I didn't even know about until after I beat the dungeon and I was doing the research. I like to make some notes and found like, oh, here's like, it wasn't something that was some of it wasn't crucial, but it was like little hints and stuff.
Some of it's just kind of like cryptic hints, but... And
so I was like surprising myself, like, oh, where would I have even? I didn't notice this one. So yeah, I don't know. That's that can be bad, I guess, but
yeah,
I think it's kind of cool. You gotta pay attention to your surroundings, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Looking at your list, so you just started with the first couple dungeons, like baseline. You had them pretty low compared to The Legend of Zelda. I mean, I get that. 'Cause I generally love playing The Legend of Zelda way more than The Adventure of Link. Like, so, you know, if it was like the game as a whole, you know, I'd mostly put it on top. But I thought baseline, I had them a little bit higher. But looking at yours now, like first couple dungeons, you know, I could move them down a little bit. It really doesn't matter though, like I was saying.
Yeah, those kind of, on my list at least, the top chunk of the dungeons on my list, they're all ones that I was like really impressed with, or I have specific things that I really like about them. And then the middle, which a lot of the middle of my list are kind of some of the Zelda 2 dungeons that I was impressed with a little bit more. But even those ones, it's like, even the best Zelda 2 dungeon, I liked it because, I don't know, I kind of have to almost fish for reasons to say things that I really, really like about it. Because there were some where I was like, oh, this layout was really cool. And there are some where I liked the thematics of it more so. Or I really liked the entrance of it. But at the end of the day, I feel like Zelda 2 dungeons, they're kind of... this is oversimplifying it for sure, but it's basically just a bunch of hallways that are connected together. And I feel like I just don't... I kind of prefer the type of exploration in Zelda 1 dungeons to going down an elevator. All right, do I go left or right? Let me go all the way across this hallway. Okay, it's a dead end. Let me go all the way back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I sort of agree. I think they did a pretty decent job with what they were going for, but I think I said it when I did the definitive ranking of this game on Zelda Dungeon, but like it has even contemporaries at the time that did this type of gameplay better, you know? So like, it's one thing to be like, well, it's it's an older game, but then it's another thing to be like, well, there are games from this era that did it a little bit better. So retroactively I'd probably move down a couple because to get more Legend of Zelda representation, but I'm sticking to my guns. I'm not gonna it would feel dirty to alter things unless I made like some truly grievous error.
Yeah, that's fair. This is your list.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it where it lies, they say. That's fair. Of the four you have grouped up here, is there anything that like truly stands out as like what's your favorite element of any of these?
So Maze Palace, that I feel like that was probably one of the best. Well, first of all, I was kind of making up my own little headcanon for the thematics of this dungeon, because I know we were talking about how in Zelda 1 you get to level 6, which is the dragon, but that is the one where there's just like a bunch of Wizrobes. And in there you get the magic wand, or the magic rod. And in my mind, when I went through that, I was like, oh, it's like you're sneaking into their base and stealing their weapon, you know?
Yeah.
So in this one, I kind of felt even more like that, because you could have gone there in the first place, and, you know, if you didn't have the reflect spell yet, then you probably would have a lot of trouble. You wouldn't really be able to beat them at all. So you kind of need to use their own spells against them. And then I was also thinking, like, okay, it's a palace filled with wizards, and the boss is literally a wizard, like a big badass wizard
boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their dungeon in the overworld is on Maze Island. So I was kind of thinking, like, oh, you know, they're wizards, they're smart, maybe they set up this whole maze so that they can stay, so that they can stay secluded. Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
But that's just the thematics. What I really like about Maze Palace is that there's a specific like loop. I think that's the one that introduces falling from one level to the next one. And that sequence where you go to the right, I think that's designed really well, that you have to... It's very intuitive, because it's likely that you'll try and go on the top level and fall down and then grab a key, and then you got to go back up and you try again. And as you're falling down, you notice that there's... You know, on that first level that you fall to, there's a ledge over to the far right. So you're probably thinking the next time you fall down, like, oh, maybe I'll try and land there and see what's over there. And that leads to the dungeon item, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that was like maybe my favorite gimmick of the whole game, is that, and in the hidden palace or whatever, where you have to use the ferry. That's like the two. I love that it was
exactly.
like...
That's also why I have Hidden Palace right below Maze Palace, because basically for the same reason.
Yeah, that's a cool gimmick. One of the best gimmicks introduced in the game for sure. I think too, because we talked about it in The Legend of Zelda, but like it's before A Link to the Past, where it like really introduces like multiple floors and levels.
Yeah, the verticality of some of the dungeons.
And going up and down the elevator doesn't really, count. So, that was cool. And I like that theming aspect, yeah.
Yeah, and then Hidden Palace I have right below it, because it's got a lot of those... It's got some similar layout design choices. I just feel like it's just a little bit more complex than I would like it to be without a map. But also Barba is... probably one of my favorite bosses in the game. I like fighting Barba.
Yeah, Barba is sick.
Oh, and Hidden Palace, that too. I feel like that's probably one of the... none of these really have like... this is the water theme, this is the forest theme, this is the fire theme. I think Hidden Palace may have been the closest, because the whole dungeon is red, and it has probably it has probably some of the most lava pits out of any other palace in the game, I noticed.
Okay,
and and the boss is like a fire-breathing dragon, so I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. They're pretty cohesive with this one.
That's pretty legit. And that also that had the return of the Iron Knuckle boss, which was cool, right?
Yeah, yep.
The theming of that was cool too. You had kind of like the Iron Knuckle dungeon with was that on Island Palace?
Island Palace, yep.
So,
and that's why Island Palace is right below Hidden Palace for me.
Okay, I can appreciate that. Okay, yeah. But then your top 5, it remains unchanged from the previous. Yeah, I had thrown in Hidden Palace because I really thought that was cool. It almost felt like a final dungeon to me, because you had. It was all the enemies. It was really missing new enemies, but you had all the enemies. You had old bosses coming back, and it was just, you had the gimmick of 2 different dungeons kind of mixed together with like hidden floor and falling from the floor.
Yeah.
So I really liked it. I could see that. But now we have to rank the Great Palace. You know, before we even get to it, we should talk about like that, like the other dungeons. It has a journey to get there, but it's a very intense journey to get to the Great Palace.
Oh yeah.
We got to go through, I think it's called like the Valley of Death or something. Like there's a lot of like areas of death in this game, I feel like.
Yeah. For sure.
And it's grueling. Yeah, you can, I mean, when you think you're close, like there's still like a couple of those like screens where you go into a battle, and yeah, it can suck to try and get there.
It is pretty brutal. And then that's the one kind of forgiving thing about it, is that they do finally make it so that if you game over in Great Palace, you still start at Great Palace. Because if they made you go back through that valley every time, that would be something else. I don't know how you can get through that area without losing like a life or two.
For me, that was like immediate points to the dungeon. But then it was like, but then I wasn't like taking points off for that factor in other dungeons. So maybe I'm being a little biased towards the game. I think
that's fair. There can be aspects of a dungeon where like if it has it, it's a nice bonus. If it doesn't have it, it doesn't necessarily hurt it, you know?
It definitely hurts it. I'm sure it hurts it I remember the first time I played the game, it was such a grind. But now it's like if I die in like Medoro Palace or one of those, it's like okay, I can get there. No problem.
Not that hard to get back there.
And if you really want to, you can save state it or whatever. But
yeah, that's one thing I haven't mentioned yet, is that I played this on the Switch online version, and I didn't do like the SP, the one where you're already leveled up. I didn't do that one, but I did make save states and use the rewind feature a lot.
That's fair. That's a legit way to play it now, I think, because it could use some. I didn't, because I was like, I want the raw experience.
Brutal.
It wasn't that bad though. I've also hit a point with it where I'm not great at the game, but I'm not like if I die in a palace, it's like not too bad for me to get back there. I know where I'm going now.
I mean, I don't know, because a lot of them, it was just like a lot of moments where I used it. It was like, all right, I'm going to go explore this corridor, see what's at the end. I get to the end, it's not anything interesting, and I happen to have lost a life, and I'm like down all the way to my health, so I'm like, let me just rewind.
Yeah,
this wasn't worth it. It's fine.
I usually find something and I'm like, I don't want to reset. Like I found the item, or I got some keys, you know. So yeah. But anyway, Great Palace itself, it's a sick entrance when you get there. It's it's like The Legend of Zelda, where it's our first dungeon that actually has different music.
Yeah.
So that also raises its profile in my eyes a little bit.
Yep.
And it's sick. This is like the only one with like actual lore, not in like make up your own lore. So you have this. Well, first of all, the sky is dark, which is sick. That all the other dungeons, it's daytime, but there the sky is dark, and you've got that that awesome the like binding force that barrier, looks sweet. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And if you read the manual and like, I think it's mostly in the manual. You've got all that juicy lore there about the backstory of the game and what you're doing. And so this truly actually does feel like a big conclusion. I think better than it just has that element of like entering it better than Death Mountain in The Legend of Zelda, because they don't the old man disappears if you have all the Triforce, so it's like you don't even know what you witness, Yeah,
it's true.
Here you get to actually see the fruits of your labor.
Death Mountain, the skull in Zelda 1, that's even like, it's kind of, you could have passed that rock in the overworld multiple times and then at the very end be like, oh, there's a dungeon in here, and you're just kind of in it. Whereas this has this has arguably the hardest section in the game leading up to it. And it's
that's true.
It's like you're working up, almost like it's like on a mountain or something, and you're working all the way up, and then you're at the top of this, and there's this literal great palace.
Yeah, it's true, like, hype building for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got the new music, the lore. I wanted to talk about the lore of this actually, because it actually even still for me had some, what do you call it, implied lore, or headcanon, I guess is the word. Because, okay, so the Great Palace, the King of Hyrule or whatever constructed it and put the Triforce of Courage there to protect, so that only whoever is worthy can go and prove themselves, and it's guarded by all these, whatever enemies. Presumably, like, I don't know. Presumably, the enemies in these locations are like guarding like the Triforce.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Like, I don't know does that make them evil? I don't quite understand, actually.
I mean, they might not. How many of the dungeons? I mean, I didn't go this in depth into it, but like, I'd be interested to see how of the enemies in this dungeon, how many of them appear in a lot of other places in the game. Because if they don't appear in many other places, then I think it's kind of fair to assume like maybe these aren't Ganon's minions. They're probably just there to protect the Triforce or something.
Yeah, I don't think there's many. No.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the Japanese version of the game, there's like Octoroks in there instead of those, like, instead of the ropes or whatever they're called. But I think otherwise. And then there's like those little fish guys.
Yeah, and the fish guy. Those kind of like the little, like the fish guys and the bubbles, like I feel like you just see them everywhere.
Maybe he just the king collected some wildlife and, threw them in there.
Yeah, just threw them. He built a little ecosystem in here as an experiment.
So I don't know, but anyway, like the theme, there's like a theme in this one in that like there's a lot of bird enemies, which I think is cool. There's like 3 different bird enemies, and what I thought was kind of
think of that.
Yeah, so you've got the like guys who bounce up and down. I think they're called the Fukeru. They bounce up and down, spit out fire. Then you've got the fierce Faka knights who are a pain in the ass, but they're my favorite enemy in the game actually, because they're just so sick.
Those guys are badass. Full disclosure, I did not defeat one of them on this playthrough.
I run away.
And I saw them and I was like, not a chance. I'm not doing this. And
then you've got the boss Thunderbird, who we can get into more. But so yeah, there's like a bird theme here, and I always thought it was kind of cool. Now thinking back on it, you look at the Hylian family crest or whatever, the royal crest, and it's got it's got the bird on it with the Triforce. It's got a bird guarding the Triforce.
That's really cool. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I was like, a little headcanon here, like this connects, So I. Like that even like got me pretty pumped about this dungeon, because I think it has both like the strongest like actual story lore in the game, and like there's a little bit more there that maybe I'm just thinking too much about, but I like it.
I mean, that's definitely that definitely at least sets it apart. It makes it more unique than some of the other dungeons in the game for sure.
You got all these enemies, but then not only that, this is probably the largest dungeon in the game, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it is.
And in my opinion, you can let me know what you think, but I think it has less of the issue you're talking about of being too big, because one, there's no like keys in the dungeon. There's no doors. Yeah. And then also like all the paths they all kind of like lead down the same way. Like this is the first dungeon that has like multiple routes really, and they all kind of go to one place.
Yeah, so that was something that I before this I had thought pretty highly of Great Palace. I knew I liked Great Palace, and that could be like final dungeon bias, but
yeah.
As I was approaching it this time, I was a little worried. I was like, I know this is a huge dungeon and I'm not using a walkthrough this time, so I'm nervous that I might think worse of it this time because it's so big. And I definitely agree with you. I played through and I was like, that actually wasn't that bad, because it really does kind of funnel you towards the end. And I do like that the end, it's like you're going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And
yeah,
I pulled up the map and I'm kind of looking at a big version of the map right now. And it's basically like every time it presents you with a choice of like going right and left, usually one of them quickly leads to a dead end and you're like, okay, I can't go this way, I gotta go back. There are a couple instances, and there's basically one big one towards the early part of the dungeon where it's like you can go left or you can go right. And basically they end up forming two big kind of loops almost. And like the left path, you technically can't reach the area you need to get to the boss from there, but it leads you right to the room. There's a room where you're at, the hallway where there's blocks on the ground and you have to break them and drop through the hole.
Yeah.
That is the essential area where you need to drop through, and the other loop on the left side leads to a hallway that's directly above it. So you can see that in the same room, and you can be like, oh, I have to get there. But then that same loop loops back up and joins with the other loop. So there's never really an instance of throwing yourself super far into this dungeon and then being like, crap, I have to go back.
Right, yeah. It's really, I think, especially for the time, like really cleverly designed, I think.
Mm-hmm.
This is the only one. Well, maybe Island Palace had this a bit too, but this is like a true like gauntlet kind of dungeon where you're just facing enemy after enemy.
Oh yeah, actually, long paths, really tough. This also has probably some of the most hidden like invisible walls and invisible floors out of any dungeon. They're all over the place in this dungeon.
What I like about a lot of them is like they're more optional. Like you can go off to the side and get like a red potion or something like that. So it's a lot of like, this is really hard, but if you know the secrets and the shortcuts, it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah, it'll be helpful.
Yeah, so playing it again, I did a little bit of it the hard way, and then I was like, okay, I know like over here there's some potion and stuff like that. So it's got a good mix.
There's a little Link doll in here, a little extra life,
which is I think that's very useful because
especially at that point.
Yeah, like mostly like Link dolls, I find the concept annoying because it's like you get it and then it's like you could get that when you're like about to die on your last life and you're like, well, I guess I'll be alive a little bit longer, like in the overworld or something. But this like in a dungeon is great. Definitely. You need it.
You waste a bunch of lives just trying to get to it in the overworld, and then it's like, oh, thanks.
One thing I didn't write it down, but I guess it fits alongside with the, you come here, it's got this epic entrance and the music, but also like, it's like a golden palace, like that just looks sick.
That made it stand out for me. That was really cool, I thought.
You've got a lot more of those like rooms with like the curtains.
Yeah.
That's just nice interior decoration going on.
Yeah, it's a nice looking dungeon for sure.
So yeah, we talked about there's actually not a lot of like types of enemies. There's like some larger versions of like the bots and the bubbles, which are kind of cool looking.
I do think that's cool that those are brand new, aren't they? That it's like the boss bot and the king bubble or something.
Yeah, I like that it's like large versions of like the most basic enemies, but it's kind of cool because I think then it does keep more of the focus on like, that's why it stuck out to me that there were like all these bird enemies, because they're really the only ones who are putting up a fight. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I love both those new enemies too, both the Fakas or whatever. Mm. So, but
they're awesome.
They are awesome, yeah. But now we could talk about Thunderbird now, which I think,
oh boy,
for me, yeah. What do you think about Thunderbird?
Thunderbird is hands down easily my favorite boss in this game.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Thunderbird is so cool. It just is something that like kind of bothers me though, is that like there's artwork of him, like official artwork, and it makes him look like a lion or a cat or something. And then this sprite looks nothing. It's like, what is this thing supposed to be?
It's just supposed to be a big old eagle, you know?
Yeah.
I think that happens with some of the other enemies too. It's like, there's like artwork where they must have not passed like the word along what it's supposed to be. Yeah. And then you get some like weird like alien or something instead of what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. I just really like the Thunderbird boss fight. I think it's so much fun. Like, you have to have thunder to even be able to damage it, and then it's just raining fire on you the entire time, and you have to jump high up and stab it in the face, and it's just a really fun boss fight that keeps you on your toes like the entire time.
Yeah, you need magic for sure. Luckily, they put some magic off to the side, but you'd have to know to go find it. But you know, this it's punishing sometimes with the magic for sure.
So that's one more thing that I wanted to ask, is that this never happened to me because I knew that you needed the thunder spell to fight Thunderbird. But what are the chances that someone didn't go back to Kasuto and get the thunder spell from that guy, and then they get all the way here, all the way down to Thunderbird, and he's just invincible?
Yeah, that's probably possible, awful. Yeah.
Because like I didn't even know after Hidden Palace. I think the item in the Hidden Palace is what allows you to see
you need the cross
in Kasuto, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, it's not required, you know.
Yeah, so I got after Hidden Palace, I was like, well, I might as well go back to that town because I should be able to see them now. And I just stumbled upon the guy, and I was like, oh man, good thing I came back here.
Yeah, I think it's not out of the realm of possibility, though I do think if they put a town there's got to be something of interest, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
And to their credit, there's only one thing of interest in that town.
Uh-huh.
So it's not like you could go there, you know, talk to someone else and be like, well, I got what I needed and leave, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility, yeah.
Chances are someone is going to go back there because they're going to be like, last time I went here, there were invisible enemies hurting me, so I got to see what's going on.
Unless you go, I might need something from... No, you wouldn't think something from the Great Palace would cause Probably you to not. See. No, because you go through they make sure that to make you feel like this is the point of no return. I feel like Thunderbird it's so epic. It's fun too. I just love you pop on thunder, you hit the jump spell so you can jump up and hit him in the face. You know, I throw on shield. If you use reflect, the fire doesn't hurt you.
Yeah. I only found out about that recently, actually.
So you just turn on all these spells, and then it's pretty basic, but it's still a lot of fun.
He's got a great boss fight arena too. It's not just like curtains hanging from the top left to right. He's got like a pedestal and there's pillars surrounding it.
That was a standout for Barba as well.
Yeah.
That the setting was slightly different.
Yep.
It really stood out. And then, of course, there's actually a final boss, which is kind of I love that twist almost, where you go into the last room.
That's
this
brutal.
Yeah, it actually kind of sucks. But this weird, like, old man appears. I don't know what his deal is, but he's got the Triforce. How long has
he been down here?
There's like a really funny piece of... I don't remember it's official art or from a guide, but you know that image of Link fighting Dark Link from this game? Yeah. And I gotta send it to you because you gotta look at it.
He's just in the background or something?
Yeah, and he's got this look like, oh, this is some fucked up shit going on right now. Like, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever like seen a fight in real life. Like, and it's like actually really scary.
Yeah.
It made me think of the time I saw a fight once in a parking lot, and I was just like really freaked out.
Guys just like, oh man, I wish I wasn't here.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I think I'm projecting that onto his face, because now that I'm looking at it, you can't see it. But like the light is shining on him, and it looks like he's got his arms out, like whoa, 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 whoa.
Whoa, guys, hold on.
Like, yeah. So anyway, this weird old man sicks Dark Link on you. So you know, iconic first appearance in the game, and it's a cool look. Like everything goes purple. And you're kind of like in shadow with him.
Fighting your shadow, yeah.
It's your true final test that the king wanted you to do, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, what can you say about that? It's just a good, you know, like, it's just an epic setting that the game doesn't really do a lot, at least as much as, you know, later Zelda games do.
Yeah, thematically, that's really sick. And I think, is this, because I know Link's design is based on Peter Pan, so this could be another Peter Pan reference too, actually, because Peter Pan always struggles fighting his shadow. There
you go. Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I that's always a great element. I like, I like that, you know, fight your your dark side, or whatever.
Exactly. It's like
cool,
fighting
trope.
your own inner the bad side of you.
I don't know about this fight itself. I don't fully.
I don't understand how I got here, and I was like, because I knew I had the rewind and I had the save state feature, I was like, let me try just once to just try and fight him normally and just beat him.
Yeah,
and
I had a couple extra lives to burn here.
I could not, for the life of me, I don't get it. I don't get how you're supposed to fight him. So after that, I was just like, you know what? No. And I went in the corner and I crouch stab spammed him.
I was like reading about strategies. I'm like trying to look right now, and it says like, you know, he mimics you or like something like that. But I never got that sense, you know. Like I feel like with Dark Link and like Ocarina of Time, I've like picked up on how it works or something, you know. But this, I thought like I had because I had the Link doll, so I think I had like an extra life or two to burn. So I was like, okay, I'll try it. And I was like, I'm not sure if I made any, you know, progress on it. So I tried it again. And I was like, I still don't think I get it. So,
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, there's kind of the shitty way of doing it, which is you can just stand in the corner and stab
the cheese strategy
and cheese the fight, which is whatever. I don't know if that, I mean, the look and the setting is still so cool that I like, I just kind of like squint and imagine we're having a sick sword fight.
The concept of the battle is more exciting than the battle itself, but that's fine. Because I mean, we just fought Thunderbird, which was awesome. So
yeah, Thunderbird is a great kind of final boss, I think. Yeah. A much better final boss, I think, than Ganon was. But I also would say Ganon is a better final boss than Dark Link, because you can kind of figure out, even though it does feel kind of random, you can kind of like figure out what's going on there, you know?
Yeah. I don't
like, if you take some stabs at where the fireballs are coming from, you'll hit him.
Yeah, exactly. You can kind of predict where he's going to be to some extent, or you can at least guess and then be right sometimes.
Right, exactly, yeah. Okay. So anyway, you defeat Dark Link. You get the Triforce of Courage. You know, unite the Triforce, and you awaken Zelda. Yeah, you get a smooch.
Get a little smooch.
It says thanks a million for playing. You get the credits roll. It's a great credits. I don't know if that affects your ranking of the Great Palace, but
not of the dungeon, but I definitely do really like it.
Yeah, I think it's a nice little bow on the game. So we're here at the end.
I actually really like that theme that's playing when you're awakening Zelda, and that theme comes back in Minish Cap, actually.
It does. Oh, Okay, I'll have to listen back to that. I mean, that'll. Oh wow, maybe that's just something I've never appreciated about either game.
It's a cool theme. I like it.
This technically occurs in the Great Palace, so if you wanna, if you want that to affect your ranking.
Oh.
I mean, for me, there's already enough going on here that I actually think pretty highly of the Great Palace. So I don't know about you. Where did you rank the Great Palace?
All right. So going into my ranking, this one actually cracked my top 5.
There we go.
It's number 5, right below level 6, the dragon.
Okay. Okay. So it's not like one of the best of or maybe it is one of the best of the NES era, but
yeah,
it didn't get up there to like the Death Mountain highs.
Yeah, for me it's top 5. There are definitely more than any other dungeon in this game. There are aspects of the Great Palace that really stand out to me and that really impress me. Particularly, Thunderbird is awesome. The thematics of it are awesome. The layout design I think is really good, and I do have somewhat of a final dungeon bias. To be fair, I do really like when it leads up to a big, epic, huge final dungeon. And I feel like a final dungeon, what it should do is test all of the abilities that you've learned in the game. And this does that in spades, I think. On top of that, it has its own unique theme, which is fantastic. Its own unique musical theme. But I just think it doesn't. So that's why it gets me up to at least the top 5, but the 4 that I have above it, Death Mountain, Lion, Snake, and Dragon, I think there are just aspects of those dungeons that really start to kind of point towards what Zelda dungeon design is going to get to be in the future. And I think that kind of sets those ones apart for me a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, I can, you didn't let your final dungeon bias seep in too much, though. So that's totally fair and reasonable. Yeah, I do this usually. I'll play the dungeon and then I'll kind of like immediately write, like, where do I think it is? And then sometimes I'll be thinking about it later, doing my research, and I'll, it's like, okay, it's before recording, and I'll kind of move it around. So I initially had this, like cracking the top 5, but not totally there. Yeah. And then I was thinking about it further, and especially like, oh, it's cool, like all these bird enemies. I love the enemies already. And then like thinking about the lore and just how epic it is, and like even though it doesn't have some of the like stuff I love about Zelda dungeons, where it's like, the keys, it's got no keys and stuff like that, I still thought this is a pretty sick and epic conclusion to the game. So it boosted it, and so I put this all the way at number 2 below Death Mountain.
Ooh, very nice.
Which before I had it at like somewhere between 3 and 5, because of what I said. I just think it is an awesome final finality to the game, and it just has all this great juicy lore details that I thought is cool. So number 2 I'm gonna put it. And I also thought as we get further into the series, like there's gonna be other dungeons knocking this stuff down and stuff like that, and I wanted at least one dungeon from this game to have a fighting chance, if that makes sense. You know?
That's fair. That makes sense.
While I love like the Hidden Palace, if we're looking back on this like a couple games from now, I think it would be totally cool to at least see, like, even if it's not in the top area, to like look at Great Palace and go like, oh yeah, that was a real standout dungeon from the game. Yeah,
that's at least, even in my list, at least it cracked the top 5. At least I can, when we were talking originally, I was telling you, like, Zelda 2 dungeons are going to be right at the bottom of my Zelda 1 dungeons. And now I can say that's not true. Zelda 2 cracked the top 5. At least for now.
Yeah, I like your spread. I wish I had a better spread. I got to be honest.
Yeah,
but I'm not changing it.
I like trying to. It's really hard. It's like comparing apples and oranges to some extent, and I really feel like if this done, some of the aspects of Zelda 2 and Zelda 2's palaces in general might be what are holding Great Palace back for me. Like, it could even possibly be up closer towards where you're saying, but just the fact that there's no map and there's not, there's lava pits everywhere.
Yeah. I get that. That is totally reasonable. And it is like apples and oranges. Like,
yeah.
Now for a while, I mean, well, something like Snowhead Temple is obviously going to be way different than like the Lizard or whatever, but we at least will see like sort of like the progression. Whereas like we're not gonna really see this return to, which is kind of sad. I would like. I mean, we could compare it to other games, but like other like Metroidvanias or side-scrolling action games, but we're not gonna see this type of gameplay now. Maybe by the time we get to the end of this series, hopefully they'll release another game like this.
You know what? We have the side-scrolling sections in Link's Awakening. That's probably the closest thing.
All right, so yeah, shout out to Adventure of Link. You did a pretty good job. You surprised us all, right?
You done good.
So yeah, we're at the end of the game now. We're gonna be moving on to A Link to the Past, which is what I'm really excited about this.
Oh yeah.
The Link to the Past has some of my personal favorites.
Yep.
At least for now. We'll see where it comes when I rank them again. But yeah, I've been really looking forward to this. I kind of went through these first two games fast, and now we're slowing it down. But I think this is an appropriate place to slow down and give a close look at a lot of these A Link to the Past dungeons.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Corey, thanks again for joining me. Hopefully we'll have you back again for the end of A Link to the Past if you want to come back on.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
Where you want to promote your stuff, give a plug?
Yeah, you can just follow me on Twitter at Corey Richmond. I also have a podcast called the Player Power Podcast that I host with my friend Ryan. Gooey was actually on the latest episode of that, where we ranked the best N64 games of all time. So you should go check that out. That's on Buzzsprout, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow Player Power Pod on Twitter, and yeah, that's it.
All right, well, yeah, Corey, thanks for joining me, of course.
Absolutely, thanks for having me.
And yeah, everyone else, thanks for watching, and we'll see you at A Link to the Past.